Let's slow this down. Most budgets fail because they ask humans to make hundreds of small, repeated decisions under stress. Every purchase becomes a test. Every deviation becomes guilt. What financially calm people do differently is simple, but uncomfortable to hear. They don't rely on daily decisions. They rely on pre-decisions. They decide once, then let the system run. Here's the first shift. Instead of asking, "How much can I spend this month?" they ask, "What must happen automatically before I spend anything?" That single question changes everything. Money that's already spoken for doesn't require willpower. Money that waits for a decision always does. So the first thing that replaces budgeting is automatic priority, not tracking, not restriction. Priority. Money moves the moment it arrives. Some of it leaves before you can touch it. Not because you're disciplined, but because the system is. This isn't about perfection. It's about removing temptation from the equation entirely. The second shift is even more uncomfortable. Most budgets fail because they try to manage variable spending while ignoring fixed pressure. People obsess over coffee and groceries while ignoring the biggest drivers of financial stress: housing, transportation, debt, and recurring obligations. Calm money systems work in reverse. They don't micromanage small expenses, they redesign the big ones. If fixed costs are reasonable, most variable spending stops being dangerous. That's why some people don't budget and still feel fine. It's not because they're careless, it's because their baseline isn't suffocating. Budgeting tries to solve stress after it already exists. Systems reduce stress before it shows up. The third shift is how people think about months. Budgets assume every month should be perfect. Real financial stability works on averages. Some months are heavier, some are lighter. Trying to force symmetry creates frustration. Instead of asking, "Did I stay within budget this month?" calm systems ask, "Does this still work over time?" That removes panic. Short-term imbalance stops feeling like failure. It becomes part of the design. The fourth shift is subtle but powerful. Budgeting focuses attention on spending. Systems focus attention on flow. Where money enters, where it exits, where it pauses. Most people don't need to spend less. They need money to stop leaking through decision fatigue. So the system reduces decision points. Bills are automated, savings are automated, transfers are automated. The fewer times you have to decide, the better money behaves. This is where budgeting culture gets it wrong. It celebrates control, but control is fragile. Design is durable. Now let's address something people rarely admit. Most people don't overspend because they're careless. They overspend because they're tired. End-of-day decisions, stress purchases, convenience spending. Budgeting treats this as failure. Systems treat it as predictable behavior. So instead of fighting it, they work around it. Buffers replace restrictions. Emergency funds absorb bad months. Margin absorbs mistakes. Flexibility absorbs life. That's why budgeting feels tight while systems feel calm. One punishes deviation, the other expects it. Now here's the quiet irony. People who say, "I don't budget," often have more structure than people who do. They just don't call it budgeting. They've set their lives up so money behaves reasonably without constant attention. That's the real goal, not control, not discipline, not tracking, stability. And stability doesn't come from watching money more closely. It comes from making money boring, predictable, automated, unemotional. Now let's talk about the transition, because this matters. You don't go from budgeting to perfect systems overnight. The mistake people make is throwing everything away at once. That creates chaos. The better transition is this. Stop tracking daily spending first. Keep one monthly check-in, then automate priorities, then simplify fixed costs, then widen buffers. Each step removes pressure instead of adding rules. This is why budgeting fails long-term, but systems succeed. Budgets depend on constant effort. Systems depend on setup. Effort burns out. Setup endures. And here's the part no one likes to hear. If budgeting has failed you repeatedly, it's not a personal flaw. It's evidence that you've outgrown a tool designed for a different problem. Budgeting is useful for awareness. It's terrible for sustainability. Once awareness is built, it should be retired. Holding on to it too long turns insight into stress. That's why so many financially stable people don't track expenses. They already designed their environment. And now the uncomfortable contrast. Public finance advice still pushes budgeting because it's visible, it looks responsible, it's easy to teach. Systems are quieter, harder to explain, less dramatic, but drama isn't stability. If money only works when you're paying attention, it doesn't work. The real test of a financial system isn't how it performs when you're focused. It's how it performs when you're tired, distracted, or dealing with life. Budgets collapse there, systems hold. So if budgeting doesn't work, this is what replaces it: automatic priority, controlled fixed costs, reduced decisions, built-in buffers, long-term thinking. No guilt, no tracking obsession, no constant self-correction, just design. And here's the final thought, the one worth sitting with. If budgeting truly worked the way we're taught, why do the most financially calm people abandon it? Why do they stop tracking, stop categorizing, stop obsessing, and still move forward? Maybe the real lesson isn't how to budget better. Maybe it's knowing when budgeting has done its job and when it's time to let it go. I'll see you in the next video on Money Science AR.